For the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, I'm going to call the October 9th Select Board meeting to order at 5:30 p.m. with a reminder that if you're in the audience, please refrain from cross conversations to the best of your ability. It's very distracting for presenters and for the board. Thank you. The agenda is accepted without any changes, and we'll move to announcements.
Thank you. This meeting is being video and audio recorded. We have two special recognitions tonight. And we're going to do a few comments, and then the board members and myself are going to come up to the front and ask those who are getting the special acknowledgements to come down. So first of all, we have recognition of our retiring field assessor, Maureen DeLuca. Maureen's been with the finance department for 31 years. Hold your applause because we're going to do this at the end. And I just wanted to say a few remarks about each of these people, and the department heads are going to do the same. Maureen is one of these employees, maybe the only employee, who rather than being seen and not heard, she's more not seen, but provides a lot of very valuable information in a quiet fashion, not a stealthy fashion, but she does peer around houses and stuff. But we have gotten a lot of great information from Maureen, and we thank her very much for her service. Officer Mack has been our downtown officer for some time now. He's been with the town for 29 years. His service is also tremendously appreciated. And Jerry is, if we need something, if we spot something downtown, Jerry's on it. And he often spots it himself and gets right to it in the most diplomatic and polite manners. So thank you both very much, sincerely, from myself and town administration. And I think your department heads, if each of you could come to the mic and say your remarks, and then we'll do our presentation down front.
Any town assessor, I've had the pleasure of and honor of working with Maureen for the last 8 years. The first 4 years we were co-workers, and she is probably, and this is going to be a lot of platitudes and nice things because there are not enough nice things that I can say about Maureen. She's been fantastic to work with. After the first 4 years, I became her supervisor, and she was we still think of her as being part of the office, even though she's officially retired a couple weeks ago. She was a model employee. We wish her the best in her retirement. I cannot say enough nice things about her. She is fantastic. So thank you very much, Maureen.
Good evening. Thanks for the opportunity. Thanks for recognizing our fantastic employees and the opportunity to say a few words. Jerry Mack started with the department in 1992 as a summer specialist, so many of our folks start out, and then came on full-time in 95. And throughout his career, he's one of those rare gems that stays at the patrol, doing patrol work and really staying out, really visible in the community. It was in 2020 when he became a downtown resource officer that I think most people know him as today. And I have to tell you, I haven't worked with Jerry for very long. As you all know, I'm newer to my position, but it doesn't take very long to recognize what we have in him and how well he has served us. And actually, he's the first officer that I ever laid eyes on in this community. And he was in uniform as he is now. And I thought, wow, I'm going to have to really crease up my arms and shine my boots. He has always been a role model, not only in appearance, but in the way that he leads and mentors our CSOs and other young officers. So it's really a pleasure for me to be here. Thank you for recognizing him.
thank you both as they're departing, and thank you to their families as well. It's not that easy being a town employee, and their family support is greatly appreciated. On with announcements? Okay. The Town Council Study Committee is holding its second public forum on the proposed new Town Council form of government this Thursday, tomorrow, October 10th at 5:30. The meeting will be hybrid with in-person and video here in this room. And there are links online. The May 3rd, 2025 annual town meeting warrant is currently open for citizen warrant article submittals through November 18th at 4 p.m. Citizen warrant articles require the signatures of 10 registered voters, not anybody, registered voters. We have prepared a citizen warrant article guide. It's a guide how to prepare a citizen warrant article. We just finished updating it. We urge people to read it. There is a lot of information in there that seemingly people don't seem to be aware of once the article makes it to town meeting. We also want to just mention, and we may mention this again as the warrant develops, but we've been advised routinely by our legislators that Nantucket submits more home rule petitions than any other community in the Commonwealth, and that causes a bit of a dilution of priorities with those initiatives, so we should be really mindful of what we put forward for home rule petitions. Town Council will be available for citizen warrant article consultation next Wednesday, October 17th from 10 to noon, and next Thursday, October 17th from 4 to 6, both sessions via Zoom, and people may contact town manager at nantucket-ma.gov for Zoom links. We, again, encourage people to take advantage of this unique opportunity to speak with town council. I think between Erica and our public outreach manager, you guys are going to take item 6.
Good evening. Hi, good evening, Select Board, Florence Rural Communications Manager. Yes, I just wanted to mention that we have launched a road closures webpage where we'll be updating the community on road closures weekly. All the updates are going out on Monday, and we're doing social media outreach as well. So we understand that this is the busiest time for road closures and projects. And we encourage the community to sign up if they wish to receive updates directly to their emails. But if not, the information will be available in social media every week on Mondays. And it can also be found on the town website, the homepage, or if not, nantucket-ma.gov/roads. And if people go to that page, they will be able, as I said, to sign up and receive updates and all information related to road closures.
Thanks, Florence.
I would note that it is busy. There is a lot of stuff that's going to be on there every week, and it's only getting busier.
Thank you. Town offices will be closed this coming Monday, October 14th, in observance of Indigenous Peoples' Day. And Select Board.
Okay. Are there any Select Board comments from the other board members? Dawn?
I actually have something I wanted to bring to the board's attention. The community impact fee is just starting to be instituted as of October 1st. And I'm really concerned that what's actually happening in practice is not at all what the intent of town meeting was in terms of instituting this fee. And I just want to explain a little bit why. Because my understanding of the worry of the community was trying to find ways to dissuade corporate, full-time, short-term rental businesses. And that was one of the ideas with instituting the community impact fee, that would be a disincentive for people with multiple properties. What's happening in practice is that the majority of the people who are really organized that own multiple properties have them all in separate LLCs. The community impact fee does not apply. Who it does apply to is your homeowner who has a main house and a cottage or a garage apartment, and they rent both of them, for any length of time. I mean, they may use theirs for 3 months or more, but they do rent it some. So they're the ones who are getting hit with this. And then on top of that, it's actually not even ending up necessarily going to the property owner, but getting directly passed on to the tenants, which maybe people do or don't care about that, but it's just creating this really strange bifurcated market where some properties have an 11.7% tax and some properties have a 14.7% tax. It's creating a lot of confusion and just a lot of, I think, unintended consequences. So I just wanted to raise it so that the people were aware, because I think that it's not coming to fruition what was really intended in terms of a disincentive. Thank you.
Thanks, Dawn. Perhaps we can take it up as a more robust discussion as an agenda item before we set the warrant.
Yeah, and when you were gone, we thought it was going to be charged one way, and then it seems to be slightly another way. So I think
Yeah.
it's a work in progress.
Yeah, I think it's worth a future agenda. Okay, any other comments from the board before I have a few? Okay, so first I'm going to give a little update on Vineyard Wind, just to let the community know that a press release has just gone out that is intended as an update to try to inform the community about what we are doing in terms of advocacy with Vineyard Wind following the blade turbine crisis versus what falls in sort of the legal realm of negotiations that stay out of the public eye. So please look an eye out for that. It'll be posted up on the page as well as in the media in the next few days. But I wanted to remark in one particular area, and I wrote it down because I have a lot to say tonight. I wanted to give the community an update regarding our ongoing advocacy following the July blade failure to make sure that offshore wind farms are required to have adequate response plans in place for mechanical failures that result in the dispersion of debris in the ocean. I've been working closely with senior officials of the Office of the Secretary of Energy and Environmental Affairs of the Commonwealth. In fact, I had a meeting this week with 3 senior officials from that office who traveled to Nantucket to meet with me, and we began the process of reviewing what happened following the incident and to begin drafting a framework for a, quote, debris response plan. We're working to engage in a dialogue with our legislative delegation in Washington and the federal officials that regulate offshore wind about adding these response plans as requirements in the wind farm permitting process. We will keep the community updated on opportunities to participate individually in these advocacy efforts. The point being that we are trying to use the impact that Nantucket experienced this to change policy across the wind industry to the best we can. So I just wanted people to know that. And then I have some responses to read related to Ms. Perry's comments during public comment last week. And this first statement was drafted with help from the housing director, Christy Ferrantella, and others who were involved. And it's regarding statements or questions and statements made about a supposed agreement between the town and the developers of Surfside Crossing. In July, the developers of Surfside Crossing 40B approached the housing office to continue discussions aimed at ensuring that 75% of the units within the development would be restricted for year-round use. On July 30th, they submitted a, quote, options contract, unquote, for the town to review and for the select board to consider an upcoming meeting. Throughout August, the housing director worked in collaboration with town administration and town council to analyze this proposed contract and provide a staff recommendation. On August 19th, the housing director, finance director, and a representative from the select board and the Affordable Housing Trust met with the developers to present alternative strategies for reaching the 75% goal, year-round goal. The housing director notified the developers that she was unable to recommend the options contract they presented without a clear understanding of its financial impact on the town's budget. Following these discussions, both parties agreed that it would be more prudent to utilize the existing Affordable Housing Trust Fund programs rather than creating a new untested program that had not been fully evaluated for fiscal responsibility, EOHLC approvals, or alignment with community needs. As a result, the housing director notified the chair and vice chair of the select board that the agenda item should be removed as no formal agreement was ready. On August 31st, the developers formally withdrew the draft options contract. Both the town and the developers concluded that using existing programs such as the Closing Cost Assistance Program, the Year-Round Deed Restriction Pilot Program, or other future housing initiatives would be the best approach. This path allows potential buyers to secure deed restrictions directly without requiring the town to engage in a new program. The town of Nantucket and the Affordable Housing Trust remain committed to supporting a project that will achieve the goal of having 75% of the units in Surfside Crossing restricted for year-round use. So just to be clear, the documents that were referenced in public comment last week were draft documents that did not lead to any agreement of any kind. And then, in the meantime, Ms. Perry also mentioned something about scheduling an agenda item, and I did receive an email request from her to schedule an agenda item at a future select board meeting to, quote, discuss alternative option for collaboration among the community at the site of the proposed Surfside Crossing project at 3, 5, 7, and 9 South Shore Road. The vice chair and I have decided to decline the request because we feel it is inappropriate to hold a public discussion regarding the potential development of municipal projects on private property unless requested by the property owner. I would be troubled if the select board held a discussion about placing our island home on property that I own without my permission, and I think most members of our community would feel the same way. I encourage those who think there are alternative uses for the properties included in the proposed Surfside Crossing development to reach out to the owners to see if they would consider such uses. Should the property owners agree to participate in such a discussion, the vice chair and I would be happy to consider a request to hold a public session. Okay. So now we're going to move into follow up on public comment from questions from the meetings actually from prior select board meetings. So Florencia, if you want to talk about the new page on the website, which is general to public comments, not about a specific one.
Yes. Thank you, Brooke. And as an example of what this page will have available is the statement that you just read. And so we just launched a public questions and response page that Erica is here showing on the screen. The idea is that we will be publishing questions asked during select board meetings and later on when we have available responses to them. Just in an effort to promote transparency and to keep the community informed. If you ask a question at a select board meeting and are hoping to learn about what the town answer is, please visit this page where we will have all the information available per select board meeting. And that is the idea, to promote transparency and so that everyone within the community can have access to responses to questions asked at select board meetings.
Okay, thanks, Florencia. And then, I don't have it in front of me. So we have responses. We did get a little bit of a backlog, so we had been working on responses from August 21st, September 11th, and September 25th. And I'm not going to read it, it's quite lengthy, but it is available in the packet. There are specific answers to all of the questions and comments that were made at those meetings. In the interest of time, it is available in our select board packet. I'm going to move on to public comment, and I'm going to remind the public that the select board's policy is a 3-minute limit for speakers. There was some request to yield time to other speakers last week. I have reviewed the policy. There is no such available yielding time, so that is not something that will be utilized going forward. And I just wanted to say that In the interest of helping speakers visually see where their time is going, we're going to start testing something next week. It's a Zoom app that puts a timer up on the screen. So a speaker either in the room or online will be able to see how their time is counting down. And I've had people be frustrated by my saying, your time's almost up, and sort of interrupting their train of thought to try to give them a heads up that time's almost up. So speakers will be able to see that for themselves going forward.
And the other point is typically Brooke allows a few seconds over. It goes to like 3:10 or 3:15, which I think she will continue to allow to do. But if people are going way, way over, then we'll have to tighten that up too. So we're sort of working on this a little bit at a time.
I'm going to go to Veronica Benet online.
Thank you, Brooke. I assume you can hear me.
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
I was actually hoping I would get there in time, pulling into the parking lot, but I can say what I need to from here. I read your statement that you put out this afternoon, and for me, it just really underscores the length of time it's been since the group I'm involved with, Act for Wales or Residents Against Terrorists, had wanted to share in the select board. I might actually have a meeting up and ask.
Veronica, you're breaking up. Did you say you're in the parking lot? Here?
Yeah,
Yeah, you need to come in and.
Why
say
don't
your
you come
comments
in and
person.
we'll give you a chance to restart your comment when you get in the room. We're not hearing every other word. Does that sound okay?
I just removed yours.
Okay.
This on?
Yes.
It is on. Okay, wonderful, thank you. I wanted to thank you for putting out that media release that confirmed many of the emails and documents that I read off last week. So with that being said, I also wanted to provide the board with a copy of an open meeting law complaint I filed with regards to that media release. I filed it today, and as the Attorney General's office requests, I'm providing it to you. Also going to provide it to the housing director because the Affordable Housing Trust is also on that complaint. So moving forward from that, I would like to ask again if the select board would please consider working on a community collaborative property project. I'm not saying that we have to do negotiations on Wednesday night at the select board meeting, but there was a lot of resources given to the agreement option that the developers provided to the town and the town worked on. And I'm curious if we could provide the same resources to somebody who's come up with an alternative idea. The past housing director has constantly said, come up with an alternative. I came up with an alternative. I am just a farmer. I'm not somebody that is in a high-paid position as a planner, a housing director, a town manager. So if we could try to use some of those resources to work on an alternative, that would be amazing. I know town council was also used. So that is one of my asks, is if that we could consider talking about it. And I know you don't want to move our island home to a private property, but maybe it's something that the developer would consider, but you don't know unless you ask. And I don't think it would be terrible to ask to have a meeting to discuss it. And I don't know that they're going to take that phone call from me, but maybe they would take that from someone in the town that has some authority over organizations like the schools, the Affordable Housing Trust, the Land Bank, Our Island Home. So I know you'd like me to keep to 3 minutes, so I'm going to try very hard to do that. And I really appreciate all of your time and look forward to hearing back from you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Diane Coombs online.
Sorry, Diane Coombs?
Sorry, yeah.
There I am. Brooke, can
Go
you
ahead,
hear me
Diane, we
now?
can hear you.
Okay, I'm going to say it quickly. Since this is such an important discussion to how Nantucket deals with growth, I this proposal that Megan has gives answers to many things that would improve Nantucket in a positive. How many times has the town voted down the OHI moving to Sherburne Commons? And Sherburne Commons doesn't want us there. They have rented that land for 100 years, I understand, and they are concerned about the noise that it would make constructing the new island home, and this has to be, I think, considered. That this her proposal creates affordable housing, gives the school their need for playing fields, and is created using the landscape that is a strong part of Nantucket, past and present. Just as a point, the Nantuckets would be able to go out on open land and be part of Nantucket and watch the children play, watch their grandchildren play, go to talk to the people who are living there in lower cost housing as neighbors, to be part of a life, not sitting at the end of a dead end driveway where they don't want to be, not seeing any part of life. This is just a part of what the proposal could be. The select board has not given us any particular way of hearing this or listening to us in a thing where we get more than 3 minutes. I just think it's important enough, and I'm not alone, that this would make a marvelous community that would fit in with Nantucket and would be no more expensive to build and would be quieter for everybody involved around. So thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Diane. Christy?
Thanks. I just have two community announcements. First, the Affordable Housing Trust has just released 2 new requests for proposals for the development of affordable housing on trust-owned lots. So we encourage developers to submit their proposals to help create affordable and workforce housing for the island residents. The details on the application process and deadlines are available on the town's procurement website. And the vacant lots include 7 Amelia, 12 Bartlett Road, 135 and 137 Orange Street, and 16 Vesper Lane. Second, I just wanted to let everybody know that Richmond Development Housing Lottery is now open. They've opened the application for the lottery of 12 income-restricted rental units at Gooseberry Place. And these units offer a range of affordability with options for households earning between 80%, 110%, and 120% of area and median income. And the public information session will be held on November 7th in this building and online. And applications are due by December 9th, with the lottery taking place on January 9th. For more information, you can visit the Richmond's office at 1 Orchid Place, or the Nantucket Athenaeum also has paper applications as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Christy.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I'm here to propose that we consider...
Just identify yourself for the record.
Yes.
Thank you.
Dorothy Stover.
Thanks, Dorothy.
Sorry, always forget. I'm here to propose that we consider pooling resources from local nonprofits to purchase the Surfside Crossing development, transforming it into something that supports our year-round community while also benefiting our tourism economy. Nantucket isn't just a tourist destination, it's a close-knit community with a deep history. We now have an opportunity to shape the future of the island for generations. By prioritizing the well-being of our residents, we can take a holistic approach that enhances year-round life and preserves the charm and draws visitors. Our community faces real challenges: housing scarcity, high childcare costs, and rising rates of depression, substance abuse, and cancer. Have you heard of the Blue Zones? These are areas where people live. There's about 5 of them throughout the world, and they live longer, healthier lives, well into their hundreds. And a big part of that is that there's a huge sense of community. One of the most significant aspects of these zones is intergenerational living, which fosters deeper connections and better health outcomes for all. We have an opportunity here to create spaces like year-round housing and senior homes paired with much-needed daycare. Research shows that intergenerational programs improve the quality of life for both seniors and children, with seniors experiencing enhanced cognitive function and children developing empathy and higher communication skills. These connections also help retain year-round families by providing affordable childcare and a sense of belonging. The benefits extend to our teenagers as well. When they feel connected to their community, they also develop stronger self-esteem and are less likely to engage in risky behaviors like substance abuse. Strong community ties also improve mental health and reduce depression across all age groups. Taking a holistic approach benefits the island's economy as well by creating community spaces that both serve residents and visitors. We protect Nantucket's culture while enhancing the tourism experience in sustainable ways. Pooling nonprofit resources to buy out the Surfside Crossing development would allow us to create something that supports our residents, fosters community connection, and aligns with our island's values. Together, we can make Nantucket a model of health, well-being, and connection for future generations. Perhaps we can become the next Blue Zone because we are making health and wellness the easy choice, with top of our list having a holistic approach to community. We have an opportunity here that won't show itself again. I ask that this board request nonprofits to make a move because this will benefit all who live, visit, and care for our island for the future generations to come. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thanks, Dorothy. Burton Balkine online?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Burton Balkine. I first like to thank you and the board for creating a space to answer public comments. As I've said in public comment before, I felt like this was a little lacking. I hope this move that you guys have made will fill that hole. I also wanted to know where the 3-minute limit came from. I know it's procedure. Trying to understand why 3 minutes was picked. Seems like when you're trying to encourage community engagement, limiting speech isn't the best way to do that. I do understand that some meetings go long and you want to curtail some overboard and speaking, but I think it doesn't happen very often. I think that that the benefit of letting people speak longer would outweigh any of the cost. And then a question is on Wiggles Way. I'm curious when that is going to be habitable. I remember hearing something at a meeting about October 24. And also on that note, if you could also explain the cost overruns, how much from the original cost to where we are right now, the cost of it. Thank you for your time and for listening to the citizens.
Thanks, Bruce. Anyone else? Oh, she's there. Okay. Veronica, do you want to come down here and I'll take you after this gentleman? Go ahead.
I want to talk about something that kind of got buried in the ZBA.
Could you please?
Conversations we had for some 14 months.
Excuse me, sir? I don't know. Just say your name.
Jack Weinhold.
Okay. Thanks, Jack.
Rain barrels were once used to hold drinking water. No longer. Rainwater is now contaminated and unsafe to drink. Westerly island wind and rain contain smoke and microparticles, the byproduct of industrial smokestacks and vehicle exhaust pipes. Fortunately, the island's undisturbed, compacted sand filters out the contaminants, allowing rain to safely recharge our drinking water aquifer. Federal, Commonwealth, and local laws agree if more than 15% of a lot is covered by impervious surfaces, things like roofs, driveways, sidewalks, and streets, the rain runoff must be treated to remove contaminants before the water is introduced into the ground. Stormwater runoff is a problem with all island development, especially high-density housing projects such as Surfside Crossing. There are solutions, but they have costs and require long-term builder commitment. Systems used for mainland development do not apply on Nantucket, not on our island, where our drinking water aquifer is beneath where we live. Rain runoff is on a par with rising water and PFAS. It deserves equal attention. It's time to honor the law. I ask the board to sanction a stormwater action group for research and development of a plan to avoid aquifer shutdown. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Veronica.
Thank you, and thank you for letting me come inside. I heard the announcement that you made and that was issued this afternoon about all of the terrific attempts to work with the offshore wind developers. And I also hope that it is true that we have a meeting coming up soon where our group, Act for Whales, Act Residents Against Turbines, can share a lot of information that we have with the select board. And one thing the reason I came is because in that statement, you mentioned the importance of Nantucket doing their part for climate change. And I wanted to submit, and I've emailed these 3 documents to Erica to share with you all. This is the ISO New England's 2050 transmission study, their economic planning for the clean energy transition document, and a 3rd document that shows all of the many, many times that each project document states there is no benefit to climate change from these projects. It's hard to read these documents and make the case that offshore wind is the correct path for Massachusetts. It is shown that building 3 times the necessary capacity to make up for intermittency is needed. So the most they ever think New England will need for electricity is 60,000 megawatts. Because of offshore wind, they need to build almost 130,000 megawatts of energy. It's tremendously destructive to the environment and very duplicative source of energy. The document also shows that green hydrogen, which is the reason all of these offshore wind projects were supposed to benefit climate change as part of a future initiative, is not a possibility. It's not feasible. It's never going to happen in New England. They go on to explain the more offshore you build, the more baseload you need to have. And they make the case that they either need to build more natural gas plants or small-scale nuclear. Between now and 2050, they build another almost 100,000 megawatts of electricity, and at no time does the amount of natural gas burned for electricity production go down. These are state documents or government documents, and I thought that they would benefit you. There's some really great charts and graphs in there that explain why offshore wind will not benefit climate change ever. So I thought that I would submit those. I've emailed them to Erica, and hopefully she'll get them to you. And thank you for your time.
Sure thing. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Linda Durancis. I brought arts and crafts because we all know how much we all love those. Can any of you imagine Nantucket without the bike paths? I can't. Do you know how we got the bike paths? Do you know how they were achieved? Many avenues: eminent domain, donations, and out-of-the-box thinking. The community collaborative project that has been endorsed by so many members of this community has something in common with the bike paths. It benefits everybody. You have lost all leverage in negotiations with the developers by giving them everything they wanted. And yes, you said it was a contract that wasn't signed. It wasn't signed because of Nantucket Tipping Point and Nantucket Land Council. Those were the third parties mentioned. You were also you were giving them tens of millions of dollars of taxpayers' dollars. Nowhere in the records obtained was there any pushback from any of the town officials that saw and worked on this document. This board is going to be reviewing Surfside Crossing. How is anyone to believe, after seeing that contract, that you are working for the health, safety, and welfare of the entire community? I'd like to know, what was the total dollar amount in regards to that contract that the town was going to be paying the developers? What was the total dollar amount that the developer wanted? A lot of time and effort went into that contract. Town employees will also be asked for input of this project of Surfside Crossing. What guarantees do they have that they will face no retaliation if they, quote, do not give unconditional support for this project? See number 2 of the agreement. Speaking of retaliation, I have to say you've tried to make Megan Perry the poster child of Don't Cross Us. You've let town officials call her names. You've had her name slandered at a meeting she wasn't even present at. Megan Perry tried many times to get the community collaborative on the agenda and was ignored. Your actions last week in this contract have had a devastating effect on what is really going on. You've had illegal meetings to push the developer's agenda. You have missed key documents. You are letting one of the developers run a commercial business in a residential neighborhood on South Shore Road. That one even made People magazine. You've tried to give the developer no oversight and millions of dollars of our dollars. And you've undermined 2 separate Nantucket boards, all in the name for these developers. This board is truly at a crossroads and people are watching. The community collaboration is a great idea, one that should have been brought forth by somebody who is a lot smarter than me and is paid a lot of money by the town. It benefits everyone in this entire community. Please, please get to work on this idea. Think outside the box and look what you can get. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move on. There's no new business. Next on the agenda is approval of minutes, warrants, and pending contracts. Any questions or comments or a motion from the board?
Move approval?
Second.
Okay,
Yes.
all 3, yep. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's unanimous. Citizen departmental and committee requests and reports. This item on the selection of an independent firm to review the African Meeting House investigation is going to be postponed. I met with the police chief, reviewed the 2 firms that responded to the request. One firm chose not to respond. And then I reached out to Ms. Holgate, who was the citizen warrant article proponent, and asked to schedule a meeting with her to review the firms and get her input on the selection. And we had hoped to get that done in order to do that this evening, but due to some travel plans, that has not been scheduled. So this will be postponed to a later meeting. But the plan is to meet with Ms. Holgate and people on her team to review and have them help out in the selection of the 2 respondents. So we'll get to that as soon as we can. Okay, next up is request for waiver of the town noise bylaw for the sewer main extension. Are you taking that, Erica?
Sure. So the airport has a airport housing project off of Novadear Farm Road, which is going to require a sewer main extension on Novadear Farm Road. And it was determined in a pre-construction meeting.
Excuse me, can you guys take your conversations out into the hallway, please? Thank you.
It was determined in a pre-construction meeting that we held, that various departments attended, that Novadear Farm Road with the schools and the businesses and the residents is just way too busy, and it would negatively impact traffic on Milestone Road and Old South Road if we allowed the closure during the day to do the sewer line work. So the proposal is to do the work at night between 6 PM and 6 AM. And we have representatives here. Noah is here from the airport, and we've got some representatives from the engineering company and the building company if there's any questions, but the request is to grant the night work, and that's the recommendation.
Any questions or motion?
I'll move approval. It's all in order.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's unanimous.
Thank you.
Okay. Town managers report.
Okay. So first off, we've got an update on the proposed new Our Island Home facility, and I want to give a little bit of an introduction to this. We have recently sent a letter to abutters in the area, and it is also posted online, and it contains a history of how we got to where we are today, which I would like to briefly review with the board. We have included this history in recent project updates to you, but in the event people are watching, I really want to make sure people understand, again, how we got to where we are today. At the 2017 annual town meeting, the town proposed the acquisition of property adjacent to Sherburne Commons, plus an appropriation for a skilled nursing facility to be constructed there. Those articles were not approved by voters. In 2018, the Select Board directed town administration to determine what it would take to construct a new Our Island Home facility at the current site on East Creek Road. Thereafter, between 2019 and 2021, architects were engaged to undertake this analysis. Charrettes were held, stakeholders were interviewed, other properties close to the current site were reviewed. We consulted with the State Department of Public Health and conducted analysis of different operating models. At its meeting on August 18th, 2021, the Select Board voted to pursue a new Our Island Home facility at the Sherburne Commons site, with the current Our Island Home facility to be repurposed for a senior center, and to put forward articles at the 2022 annual town meeting for design of a new Island Home facility. At the 2022 annual town meeting and subsequent annual town election, design and associated funds in the amount of $8.5 million was approved. In 2023, the design architect and owner's project manager, OPM, were engaged, and the board also approved the construction manager at risk project delivery method. We reviewed this with you months ago, almost a year ago. This approach also requires the approval of the State Inspector General, and that was granted in early 2024. Using the CMR process increases the accuracy of cost estimates because the contracted builder is involved in the budgeting phases along with the design team and provides a higher level of cost control. Additionally, the construction manager is contracted to deliver the project at a guaranteed maximum price based on an agreed set of construction documents and specifications. In accordance with statutory requirements, the contractor, Consigli Construction Company, was selected last spring, and our principal, Brian Hamilton, is here. We have a steering committee for the project. It includes myself, Craig Piper, and Dick Webb of SMRT Architects, both of whom are here. John Lemieux of Vertex, he is our OPM. Bob Eisenstein of Eisenstein Flaherty Associates. Bob is our current contractor assisting with administrative oversight of the facility. Assistant Town Manager Rick Sears, Finance Committee member Peter Schaefer, and Select Board member Don Holgate. We also have an advisory committee that has been established that includes the steering committee members as well as representatives from Sherburne Commons, Nantucket Cottage Hospital, Our Island Home, Friends of Our Island Home, Nantucket Center for Elder Affairs, and the Senior Center. While it has been established that the new facility will be located at Sherburne Commons, as you all know, there is a long-term lease between the town and Sherburne for the Sherburne facility on the town property. That lease is subject to an amendment and is the subject of current discussion with the Sherburne Commons Board of Directors. I'm going to turn the presentation over to Craig Piper of SMRT, but before I do that, I want to just acknowledge that this might be the last Nantucket meeting that SMRT member Dick Webb attends in person. Dick is right over there. He is essentially supposedly retired. He's been involved in many Nantucket projects, including the intermediate school and numerous municipal facility improvement projects. I really want to personally thank him for his assistance, guidance, and advice in Nantucket over the years. A lot of times it is not unheard of to say, why don't we call Dick and ask him what he thinks? So we very much appreciate your help with the town. Thank you, Dick. Craig is going to take us through the presentation update.
I'm having technical difficulties. Give me 1 second.
Well, I guess a couple things before I start. Thank you, Dick. Has been a great partner for me through this process and getting up to speed on understanding the nuances of working on island, and I understand the challenges of all the stakeholders on the island much better in the last year that I've been active. The part of the presentation today is a little bit update on the construction cost, where we are today through our process, as well as a design update. When we came in July to present, one of the big questions was how are we going to afford the operating cost and the future revenue? Bob Eisenstein is going to present that in his report as a department of our island home. Part of it is ongoing operations at our island home, and then he has a section on the new our island home. So I know that was a concern of the select board. So I mentioned in the past of when we put together the design, there's different design packages: schematic design, design development, and construction documents. Those are phases in the process. We have completed design development. We have acquired an independent cost estimator, and we have our partner, Brian Hamilton, their team doing construction estimates. We had 2 construction estimates of a much more further defined project. The construction cost is one element of the project. There are what we call soft costs, so that's furniture, IT, all the medical equipment for the facility. So if you understand also, the existing facility needs to stay operational. And we need to, if wherever the new island home goes and when it goes, we need to have all that new equipment set up to be inspected by the Department of Health before the residents move. So the idea of what equipment needs to move, a lot of the equipment is new equipment. So part of our effort is to understand what is the new equipment that we could move, and some of those ticket items for a medical facility are high. So what we have in our estimate that we'll be sharing, Eric, I think you could jump to the slide. Yeah, right here. If you can just go to the next slide here. Yes. So we're going to talk a little bit about the project cost, construction estimate, and then process that we're in of understanding constructability and how we construct and how we design, how we can save money on the project. So next slide. So back in January, this was the summary we provided of all the components of the project at schematic design level. You'll start that first line or first 3 lines are elements of construction. So those are what we call the hard cost. The items below are what we call the soft cost. So contingencies, furniture, fixture, consultants, permitting, all the elements that go into the project add up to a total. And back in July, we were at 104 million, less the work that's been already authorized. And so at annual town meeting, the request would be for 96 million. If you go to the next slide. The first line item is the construction cost. And as you can see, that's $6 million higher than it was at schematic design. But you start to see some of the elements that we called soft costs are actually in construction costs. For example, a good example of that is the PV array was previously below the line. Now it's part of construction costs. So that's why things go sort of up and down. So overall, the project has seen a significant increase of about $5.5 million from schematic design to design development. As I mentioned, those 2 estimates, the construction partner, Consigli, and the independent consultant, were about $500,000 apart in their estimate. We We're about 5% over in cost, which is pretty manageable at a DD phase. That things kind of projects kind of have a wave in it at times where they grow a little bit. We need to tighten them back up. But we've already identified in that 5.5 overage about $1 million already of just off the bat of looking at where the location of the building is, lowering some of the building heights, little things like that. And then now we're just fine tuning those assumptions and working towards getting the project back into where we were in July. The one item I wanted to mention at the rebate section, there's a lot more incentives for some of the first costs that we're putting in the project, the PV and for example, geothermal wells. We are eligible now, where we are today, based on the project, of about $4.5 million in incentives and rebates through Mass Saves, as well as the Inflation Reduction Act through the federal direct pay. So we feel we're right online and actually looking hopefully to be under that when the project is all done and all those incentives come in. So the state of the state on the budget, and I don't know if Brian wants to add anything on that, is we're always looking to save and identify any overages. And as we said all along, this is a project that is 50, 60, 70-year building, not a 20-year building, making those decisions for long term.
What I can add to that is more about the process. So when we started that estimate, now it's probably 6 weeks ago, we had an eye towards what can we do to reduce costs, right? So that's been going on for about 6 weeks, and it really culminated today with our first major meeting. Since then, we had an all-day meeting in SMRT's office to start looking at this. And a few things have already been mentioned, but that is part of the process. And we do expect to, through adjusting scope, get the number back down to where we were 6 weeks ago. So that is our number one thing right now, is how do we push that back? And we are confident that we can do it.
Without losing any of the program or
Without
scope.
cutting off part of the building. Yep.
Erica, next slide. Just the breakdown of some of those incentives. They're significant. The geothermal on the bottom from the IRI tax credit is a significant number, and that's based on the cost of the system. So the cost of the system is above in the construction cost, and because of the size of the system, the eligible tax credits, and this is a formula that has to officially go through, and we're being conservative on the estimates of rebates, because rebates, as we know, are, the goal is you get it all. We want to understand, but right now we are aligned on all of these here. Next slide. Okay. So Erica, maybe you could just go to, well, if you can make it just slightly bigger there, that would be great. I guess the big mention for the group is that after today's meeting, we're proceeding with the permitting phase. So we'll be going to the planning board and HDC and all those elements. And one minor plug, there is a senior expo on, I think, a week from Saturday, that we will have a table if folks have questions, and I believe we have a small presentation. It's at the high school, correct? Next slide. So Libby went through a great summary of the why of the project. The elements on the right of the article that was back in 2022 were the sort of our project charter of allowing privacy, dignity, independence, meaningful activity. And we've talked a lot about the design of how we were going to meet a lot of those elements. So just as a reminder, that's sort of our project charter. If you go to the next slide, The question has been raised a number of times is why is the project so big? And why is the project the size it is? So we did a little analysis, and I apologize, it's probably a little too small for the detail, but 60% of the project is resident spaces that are code required dimensions. The 40% are all the support spaces that support that original 60%. So as you know, we have all private rooms, and you can start to see the breakout of the 15-bed neighborhoods and how that breaks out. And this slide is really to show that we identify the therapeutic, the privacy, the choice, all of those take space. And so the project right now, we're at one level with support spaces in the basement, and we're about 47,000 square feet. Next slide. The floor plan is generally where we presented back in July. We've been working through a few minor changes, but for this level, it's basically the same presentation we did last time. So I'm going to jump into the building and show some of the inside photos. Erica, next slide. The interior progress. So of the 3 neighborhoods, we want each neighborhood to have an identity. That is a great tool for therapy for residents to understand their neighborhood. It's sort of like the Harry Potter has the different houses. We would have similar, there's a comfort, a neighborhood. For example, we have a wing that's the daffodil wing, we have a sea glass wing, and we have the sailing wing, as well as a Main Street wing. So identifying that as part of the therapy. If you go to the next slide. It's a way for senior care to have identity, choice, and wayfinding is really important. So clear memories, that sparks memories and discussion among the residents. Next slide. One of the things in the upper right are a bunch of comments that kind of touch on the benefits of some of the rooms and features, as well as cost effectiveness. So for example, the single bedrooms, we've talked a little bit about that in the past, but you start to get a feel for, we're trying to build a very simple base, a very non-busy room, calming feature with good windows, large windows, and choices for the family to be. The loved one can sit in a recliner and a bed in the privacy of their own bedroom. A place for the wheelchair is important. So we don't have to move the wheelchair out to get to the recliner. Everything has a space. Next slide. The bathrooms, we talked a little bit. Every resident room in that is a single occupancy room with its own private bathroom. Each bathroom is sized for mobility issues. They're all clear space for folks in a wheelchair. They're all standardized. And I think that's an important piece that Brian can mention, that all 45 of the bathrooms are the same size and standard construction. Do you want to talk about pods?
I can add to that. There's a slide later on, but the point here is the plan right now is to build these off-island and ship them here. It's a pretty common way of doing high-volume bathrooms when they're virtually identical. So it's fully planned that way now, and probably in the next week or so, we'll have a partner selected that can help finish up the design and be ready to go.
Great. Next slide. One of the elements that we really want to focus on is choice and activities. So the living room, as part of therapy, there's opportunities. There's the fish tank that is currently at the Our Island home, is one of the very, very, very popular among the residents. So we want to introduce that, but have a place for it. We want a place for a TV, but the residents can choose to whether participate in one activity or be on the edge. And the idea is that it's a big open room, and large graphics that also can be very cost-effective ways to get a feeling for the space. Simple features in the ceiling that just highlight activity and fun for the residents. The next space. The dining room, again, very simple features, very cost-effective, simple ceiling, just a small coffer with some light. The uniqueness of the light fixtures provides a little excitement, a little bit of structure from an aesthetic will help define spaces. The private dining to the lower left in the plan you see is private dining for a resident that may want to not have dinner with everyone else. They can have a smaller room, or if there's a family celebration, the family could go there. So giving a lot of the spaces choice. The living room and dining room has the ability to open up to one large room for flexible spaces. And I know there's the idea of community events and having lots of activity for folks to really enrich the lives of the residents in the facility. Next slide. So this is one of our active main streets that tie the residents to dining and the dining and living room, but it also active way to get to the courtyards. This is, which just happens to be part of the physical therapy area, which encourages use of the physical therapy space, and then for physical therapy to have outdoor exercises with the residents. So it's a great meeting space between the neighborhoods. And next slide. And the porch is another element that we've mentioned in floor plan. Here's sort of an image of how those spaces would come together. Again, I wanted to touch on, I know Matt mentioned in previous of the materials. In this particular slide, all the floors is a very calming, patterns are really poor selections for seniors that potentially have some dementia, they get disoriented. So very simple floors, but really very durable floors that are easy to maintain, and they also reduce sound when things fall. Wall protection is a very simple thing, but understanding how maintenance has to patch the walls when equipment bangs into it. So a lot of those things that you see there are very aesthetically pleasing, but also very functional. All right. Stepping back outside to the site plan, where we, as a snapshot of where we are on Sherburne Commons campus, we're on the east side. This is the area where the proposed island home is. Next slide, please. And this is where we finished our design development plans. And what I wanted to mention here was we had met with the Sherburne Commons residents, and we heard some significant concerns of traffic and parking and access along their access drive, which is on the left side of the project. And we went back to try to avoid any parking on that access road, as well as, since we are displacing where the current Sherburne resident housing is, their staff housing, would we be able to rebuild their housing in the same area? And so we came up with a plan to actually move the building to the east, and it encroaches on the setback from South Shore Road. It's 75-foot setback. We're proposing to go to the planning board and asking for a special permit to move the building to the east 25 feet, which would allow us a number of opportunities. And if you go to the next slide, this is our revised plan, and it starts to show where the building is outside of the required setbacks, but it allows us to build the new staff housing in the lower left, and all the parking and access within the site, and the drive on Sherburne Common Way has no access for parking. It's just an entryway. So we'll go through a couple three-dimensional images. Next slide. So this is the entrance from South Shore Drive, or South Shore Road, apology. This is the current image, and if you go to the next slide, this is our development with the building towards South Shore. We have really maintained the same look and feel of the facility from both the public side as well as Sherburne Commons. Next slide, please. As we move further into campus, this is obviously in the middle of summer. The trees are full. You start to see how much you can't see Sherburne Commons campus from this view. And so the next slide, please. The same sort of condition happens. The drive moves along. The new building is on our left. Next slide, please. As we start to turn the corner to define the entrance to the new R Island home, to the left, if we continue straight, that would be the entrance to Sherburne Commons. Behind those trees would be the new staff housing, and to the left, you start to see the drop-off for the main entrance of New Island home. Next slide, please. This is an existing photo, looking from our development back to Sherburne Commons, and you can see a lot of the existing trees, the pines. It really, the view from our development to Sherburne Commons is very well distinct today in those areas we aren't touching. So the next slide, if you turned around and looked back at our site, so our back is to Sherburne Commons, this is now looking at the new staff housing on the right, and the entrance drive goes to the left. We're showing relatively mature trees, and our goal is working very closely with our construction partner of identifying the trees that can be salvaged during construction to maintain the separation between the two campuses. And if we're unable to, we have a strong plan for adding landscaping and buffering to separate the facility from Sherburne Commons. Next slide. Again, this is now coming back out, another view of looking at the facility from the entrance drive. And then next slide is generally the same view you've seen before. This is just further developed, that aesthetic of the entrance drive. So we mentioned it's a one-story facility with a basement. The second floor is all mechanical space, and we've worked really hard on all the mechanical equipment that needs service is all on the second floor, and so minimizing any access from the resident rooms. And last slide, here's the perspective of the full campus development with the new staff housing for Sherburne, the new parking off of the access road, and the separation of the trees between Sherburne Commons and our development. I think I captured everything there. Next slide. Brian?
Yeah, we really already talked about this, the bathroom pods, and really what we're doing with the value engineering. So I think we've covered that sufficiently.
Okay. Next slide. One more there, and we'll be done. So just big picture, how do we get to annual town meeting? It's been scheduled for May 3rd. My team is working on our construction documents, and we're finishing them on January 10th, which then Brian will take them.
Yeah, so the process at that point is, once the drawings are done in early January, we go out to bid. And that process is, we're estimating in the order of about 6 weeks. There'll be questions from the bidders. What happens by the early March, we'll have what we're calling an initial GMP. That's a bunch of raw numbers from the subs. And then we'll spend about a month going through those numbers to make sure the scope is covered. So really by the beginning of April, we'll have a GMP lockdown.
And then pending approval, the goal is to start construction in September of '25 and be open in September of '27. So questions on the design update? I'm sure you want to talk more of the finances on the next one.
Anybody? Nope, all quiet. Okay, we'll move on to the finances.
Thanks.
So so the next agenda item is the monthly departmental update for Our Island Home, in which finances will be discussed. But I wanted to make mention to the board that at the end of the month or early November, Brian, I can't quite remember what date we settled on, we're going to be giving you an update of fiscal '26 capital projects. And that will also have an update on our so-called collision projects, which are large capital projects that are currently scheduled with 3 to 5 years of each other. And Brian is working with our financial advisor to look at debt issuance and what debt might be retiring so as to do our best to flatten the increase. It won't be flat, but not as bad of an increase to the taxpayer. As Craig mentioned, there are some offsets associated with the Island Home project. They aren't going to offset the project by huge amounts, but they are something. And there may be some potential grants available in connection with the Island Home project. Again, they won't be massive, like they're not going to cut the project cost in half or anything like that, but they will help offset the overall cost. And it will be important for people to see what capital projects are on our immediate horizon as these decisions go towards town meeting. So Bob is online, Bob Eisenstein. He's going to take us through this monthly departmental update. As the board knows, we have a program of monthly departmental updates that we initiated earlier in the year. This is Island Home. I also want to mention that Dr. McNabb has asked a couple of times now for an update on projected operating expenses for the proposed new and current facility. And tonight, we're giving a higher level fiscal '25 projection that will be in the presentation tonight. But by the end of the month, hopefully October 23rd, we will have a 5-year projection with line item detail that will be presented to the board. We had hoped that that would be ready for tonight, but it's turning out to be we want to make it readable and understandable. So we are expecting that to be put together for October 23rd. Bob, you ready?
I am ready, thank you. I would be remiss if I didn't first offer my good wishes to my friend Dick as he departs. You're not retiring. I'm sure I'll see you around. And to end that, I would just say over, but thank you for your friendship. So thank you very much, Libby and Select Board. So what I'm going to do is summarize some of the operational successes that we've been working on in anticipation of moving into the new building. And as Libby pointed out, it's a very big project to put together a more detailed summary of all the financial issues. So we'll be presenting most of that later in October. I will be presenting some of the financial issues later on in my report. But to start out, town leadership in our Island Home management have demonstrated a commitment to improving the outcomes at our Island Home. And we've done a lot of work over the last several years to improve our clinical, operational, financial performance, which we'll show in a few slides. This foundation supports a successful transition to the new OIH community that is in design and will be brought to ATM 25. The recent financial improvements we anticipate should continue with improved clinical capabilities and favorable demographic trends. Next slide, please. So this is very important. We recently, and this has been in the works for probably 2 or 3 years, there is a federal care compare quality rating system, which is called the 5-star. And we recently received a 4-star rating out of 5. This included a 5-star rating for the staffing subcomponent. And our total nursing staff turnover is 27%. And the registered nurse turnover is 20%, well below the Massachusetts state averages of 43 and 47%. So great shout out to the staff at the facility. This was a significant improvement in the overall star rating over the previous 3 years, and this takes a lot of work because we have to get an annual survey improvement year over year. So in the past, we were at a 1-star rating, and we've now improved it to a 4-star rating. Most importantly, this gets to revenue. We are able to now negotiate with additional insurers like at Medicare Advantage plans to accept more insurance plans. You have to have at least a 3-star rating or above in order to negotiate with some of these insurance plans. Next slide, please. Improved survey outcomes, just to summarize how we got to the 4-star rating. The most recent annual survey that we completed in June of this past year resulted in 4 minor deficiencies being cited. The closer to A you are, the better. So 3 Ds and 1 E is considered to be exceptional, very minor deficiencies. It compares favorably to the Massachusetts state average of 11.3 deficiencies in most annual surveys. This was a significant improvement in the number of deficiencies cited. We didn't have surveys during the pandemic, so the last one we had in 2020, we ended up with 18 deficiencies. Then in 2023, 10, and then this past year with the 4 minor deficiencies. So you can see how that took all those many years to increase our star rating. A written corrective action plan was accepted by DPH, and no further follow-up is required. Again, due to the great work of the staff in the building, the life safety survey actually had 0 deficiencies compared to the Massachusetts state average of 2.5. Those are things like fire drills and things like that, but the survey reflected compliance with policies and procedures, not with the physical plant, which is still outdated and needs to be replaced. Next slide, please. The improved clinical capabilities. We've done a lot of work over the last several years to improve our clinical capabilities. Summarizing some of those are, we now have a therapy contract with Preferred Therapy, and they do PT, OT, and speech 5 days a week, which improves our capability of attracting Medicare clients. We've contracted with a behavioral nurse practitioner, which has also just been renewed, and this provides for terrific coordination and collaboration for psychiatric follow-up, particularly for psychopharm and medication management. We have a new attending physician on staff. Her name is Anna Espirito. We just call her Dr. Anna for short. And she lives on the Cape, but she's been coming out and rounding at the nursing home 2 or 3 times per week. This has been phenomenal because it gives a sense of reassurance to our clients and our referral agents that we will have a doctor in the building. We are hoping that she will come on board full-time as our new medical director. Next slide, please. Short-term rehab capabilities. For those that aren't aware, this is a significant transition for our island home. Historically, we accepted mostly long-term care patients, which tended to be a higher percentage of Medicaid clients. We have now increased our nursing and clinical capabilities to include intravenous antibiotic therapy, respiratory therapy, wound care, and other post-acute treatments. These expanded capabilities will enable us to accept a higher reimbursement Medicare patient for post-acute and post-surgical care. Now into some of the statistical analysis. The admissions over the last 3 years, as you can tell, 2022 was during COVID, and our census was very low during that period because of the pandemic. Since then, we've increased admissions in 2023 to an average of 32 for the whole year, and in 2024, it was 30 patients for the whole year. Next slide, please. Along with the increase in admissions, you can tell the census, what we do is we call this an occupancy percentage. This is an average for the entire year. In 2022, you can tell we were down to 69%, and we've increased to 82% for the previous 2 years, 23 and 24. Most importantly, during those same year period, we've shown also an increase incrementally in what we call the quality mix, which is the combination of Medicare and private pay patients from 24% in 22, 25% in 2023, to 32% this year, just ending in June 30th of 2024. Next slide, please. The improved quality of the admissions has also been able to drive our financial performance. So we expect revenues to continue to increase year over year, particularly now with our 4-star rating, and I'll address that in a minute. Revenues from direct patient care have increased year over year. From 2022, you can see the 3.6 to 2023, 4.8, 24 dipped just a little bit to 4.6, and we're projecting FY25 to be at 5.5 million. Now, one thing to make clear here, this is direct patient care revenue only. This does not include, you're familiar with the CPE, the Certified Public Expenditures, which come in, and any other transfer payment. So this is strictly just from direct patient care. Next slide, please. Consistent with community feedback, as we've said, we're planning a new modern 45-bed single-room occupancy nursing facility. We also call them private rooms. We refer to that as the new OIH on the grounds of Sherburne Common. This will enhance the continuum of care available for island residents. Now, coincidentally, single rooms with private bathrooms better meets the market demand and reflects the current industry best practice regarding infection control. The State Department of Public Health has a lot of new regulations, all pointing towards best practice of single rooms to reduce the chance of infection and reduce and also mitigate the pandemic situation. The current OIH only has 2 group bathing rooms, which does not meet the code for privacy and dignity. And that's very important to point out. So currently, most of our patients in the current nursing home have to go down to a group area for showers, and they don't have a private shower in their room. The new OIH will expand short-term rehabilitation services for post-acute surgical patients while continuing the delivery of quality long-term care. Next slide, please. Working alongside with the SMRT architects and engineers, we have done a lot of work to include the Our Island Home staff in all of the design decisions. I know Erin in particular, who's doing a lot of design work. She just recently met with the kitchen staff, for example. We've gathered input from everybody as much as we can, clinical, food service, activities, maintenance. We've even met with residents and families. I was there one day when a family member actually came into the room, and we were looking at the architect plans with them and really taking their input. We've also had meetings with Amanda Perry in the Human Resources, and we're involving the union representatives to discuss the impact of staffing on in the new building. We have representatives for our Island Home, I think Peter and Michelle in particular, there may be others who participate as members of the advisory group, which Libby had referred to. And we work closely with our company, EF Senior Care, to develop marketing initiatives to maximize the awareness and benefits of single rooms and the key design features of the new building. We're also planning to embark on a new social media campaign. We've actually already began that in the development of future testimonials from current residents, as well as showing virtual tours as the construction process continues. Next slide, please. The demographic trends, I think we've talked about this before, but just to remind folks, in Massachusetts, there is 1.23 million people 65 years of age and over in 2020. We expect an increase of this to 37%. That should say by the year 2030, that's a typo. By 2035, this population is expected to increase even more, another 34% increase. This growth reflects people like myself and my friend Dick, the aging baby boomer cohort. In 2020, the percentage of residents 65 years and over here in Nantucket County was 16%. And by 2035, the share is projected to increase to 22%. So the 45 beds at our new Our Island Home are definitely needed. It represents a 1.3% of the estimated population of residents 65 and over. I think the national statistic for use of nursing home beds is about 2.3% of the total population over 65. So this is definitely a need for the town of Nantucket. Next slide, please. Financial projections. As noted, we're going to have a much more detailed presentation later in October, but as noted on page 8, on FY '24 ending revenues from direct patient care revenue were 4.6 million, with our census of 37 and a quality mix of 32.5. Total expenses for this ending fiscal year were 9.5. I want to make sure to point out, and this is a shout out to Michelle Monroe at the facility, we worked very hard at trying to expedite the reimbursement payments from the CPE funding. In the past, they've taken 2 to 3 years to pay us a retro payment. We have just received actually 2 payments from the CPE funds, but they didn't come in until FY '25. So one came in July and one came in September. They were for about 1.2 million each. Based on recent improvements at OIH and the additional enhancements with the new OIH, we anticipate an increase in both quantity and quality of the census. One example to show is adding 4 residents at a 9% increase from Medicare or Medicare Advantage and managed care would increase our census alone to 41, 92%, with a Q mix of 39%. At an average daily reimbursement of $720, this is a blended pay across different payer types. The payment actually has gone up recently for Medicare A to about $800, but based on this conservative estimate, our annual direct care revenues to the bottom line would increase by 1.05 million, and that would give us an annualized revenue, again, direct patient care only, of $6.2 million. Next slide, please. The revenue increases, as I said, it only increase in direct patient care. It does not include any transfer payments or ancillary revenues from additional community programming available. We anticipate minimal additional staff would be required based on our current staffing patterns. For those that don't know, we currently already staff the facility at an estimate of 45 beds, and that has to do with our union negotiations. So unless we go down to a very low census, we are at or near our very full census staffing already. So we anticipate a nominal variable increase in staffing that would be offset by a couple of factors. The reduced facility maintenance expenses from the brand new facility, the reduced utility costs from improved energy efficiency, and a reduction in, I would add contract here too, in both contract and travel nurse expenses through recruitment efforts. And I want to add one very positive development right here in terms of recruitment. We've had 3 major areas that have been very helpful to reducing our travel nurse budget. Number 1, and our contract nursing budget. Our new nursing director, Susan Herbert, came on as a contract employee, and she has just agreed to transfer to the town payroll effective September 13th. So that's 1. Number 2, this has taken a long time. We're very proud of this. We finally recruited our first full-time RN who lives here on the island. Her name is Erin, and that is a huge accomplishment. And she came from the hospital. She wants to learn more about long-term care, and we're hoping she will be a long-term permanent employee in nursing that will also allow us to decrease our travel nursing budget. And the third, we're forging a partnership with Nantucket High School through the Voc Tech program with Jessica Douglas. And the OIH has been approved through the Department of Public Health to be an approved training and education site for students who are in the allied health program who want to learn how to be a CNA. And we've done this program off island with tremendous success. So we've started taking students in high school. We've trained them and educated them to be CNAs. They've come back to work full-time or part-time. And we've also worked with those same students to go on to become LPNs or RNs. And additionally, through some new changes in the state budget and state law overseeing long-term care, there is workforce development monies available. So we're going to be looking to develop some grant monies to try to look for also educating people to, for example, partnering with Cape Cod Community College and Upper Cape Tech and over on the other side of the bridge to really encourage building our own workforce at OIH. So that's very exciting for the future. This is just saying that most of the revenue increase that we just projected would drop pretty much immediately to the bottom line. Last slide, please. Any questions or comments?
Malcolm?
Well, I look forward to some more detailed finances, but first of all, I congratulate you on your rating. My goodness, that is just terrific. I think
You know, it is, and I thank you for that, Malcolm. I hope people understand the significance. We work all over the state, and it's just.
Oh, this is one of
Kudos
the
to the
big
staff.
steals
Kudos to the staff at the building, yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the big steals of the whole island. I think it kind of got underreported or underappreciated for what accomplishment that is, because that's not an easy thing to get that rating. I guess my questions about finance, I'll wait till, I guess, the 23rd, is you list the increase in revenue, but you don't list the increase in expenses over the years. So at some point, those expenses, cannot keep up with the increased revenue. That's a concern of mine, because your anticipation of increased revenue in the future is based on a lot of wishful thinking, like staffing, for instance. That's just, we know that's an issue here, period. And also the fact it would have increased census, and I'm not sure we'll have that, despite all those numbers. I know of 3 or 4 older people that have actually moved off the island with the concept they wanted to be near their children. So they're not in your pool anymore. But again, we can talk about that more later. But again, I think it's just great, your rating. Thank you very much.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Malcolm. And I look forward to giving you more detailed information later.
Anybody else? Tom?
Thank you, Bob, for the presentation. I just had a question about the slide where you referred to short-term care options at the current facility, and I was curious how that came about and what the rationale was, and whether that is considered for the potential new facility.
Yeah, yes, it is. It's standard practice in the nursing home industry to try to sort of mix and match the types of residents that you can service under skilled nursing license. Most nursing homes take what we call short-term rehab patients. So for example, someone who's had surgery and needs to go to a nursing home right now, it's our contention that many of those folks do not know of our capabilities at our island home, because historically it was known as mostly a long-term chronic care facility. It will always continue to be that, make no mistake about that. But what we are looking to do is attract patients who, let's say, from Nantucket, go to Boston for surgery, and they may be going to a local nursing home in the Boston area instead of knowing that they can come right back here to Nantucket. So that's what we're talking about. In order to accomplish that, we have uptrained all of our nursing staff. Take IV antibiotics, for example. That was something they were not trained on before. In fact, we would get referrals from our own Nantucket Cottage Hospital, and they couldn't come over because we didn't have the nursing capabilities to take them. So it's kind of mixing all of the capabilities, if you will, in the best fashion. And those are the same types of patients, to Malcolm's question, that actually provide a higher reimbursement. And because of the 4-star rating, we will be able to attract more insurance carriers than we've previously done. We have not been able to take, for example, any managed Medicare products. We just can't accept them because we don't have a contract. That's different from Medicare A. So that will open up a whole group of additional patients that can benefit from our nursing home. And that's what it refers to. And yes, the single rooms as well, and coincidentally, tend to attract that patient population, because you can picture, any of our family members who are coming just for short-term post-surgical stay, it would be nice to know that you have a single private room with your own shower. So that's going to be an advantage for us. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else?
Can I just thank everyone for being here tonight and the tremendous effort that's gone into all of this. And I don't want it to get lost at all that that this has been in the works for a number of years, even back to renegotiating the lease with Sherburne Commons, for it to be in this location. And there's been a lot of thoughtful dialogue and redesigns and so forth that have gone into getting this to this stage without a significant land purchase cost for particularly this facility that's going to be one of the most expensive things we've done in and of itself because of what it is and how important it is. So I just, in light of some of the other things that have gone on as well, I just don't want that piece of it to get lost, although other land acquisitions could be, very exciting for a number of different purposes. If we step back on the Island Home right now, all of this work is somewhat lost and the numbers will just go up. And I think we're in a really good place, and I think that this whole team of people has been amazing, and I'm just really hoping that the community will continue to support the Island Home.
Yeah, I'm encouraged. I'm encouraged with the rating, from where we were a few years ago, and I know how hard that is. I'm encouraged by that, and I'm hopeful.
And I would say probably one of the most significant things to me that I heard is that the staffing levels now are for 45 full occupancy. And so when we think about cost, we're already covering that cost in our staffing cost. So when I think about, people say we should build a smaller facility with fewer beds, and the potential for growth here in new areas of service with staffing levels that are already in place, I think is very interesting to me. So
I just one more, I'm encouraged, but I think, as Olivia was pointing out, we've got a lot of big expenses coming along. So at some point, we're going to have to make some hard decisions. We may not be able to do everything we want to do. And that just the facts of life.
Okay, everybody good? All right. Next up.
Thank you again, team. Much appreciated, and thank you again,
Thanks, everybody,
Dick.
for coming, too.
We'll see you again, though. As we're getting up here, I also want to acknowledge Peter Holden and Michelle Monroe, staff at the Island Home of Administration, and they work very hard all day, every day to keep the place not just running, but very welcoming and nice for the residents as best they can, given the size. Thank you, guys. Okay, I think next we have online Transportation Program Coordinator Mike Burns and Public Works Director Drew Patnode to review the pilot programs, design options. You guys going to take it away?
Thanks, Libby, and thank you, Madam Chair. I'm sharing my screen. I'm assuming that's coming through okay. So the first item here is to request selection of a design alternative for the widening of the sidewalk along Sparks Avenue. As presented earlier this year, the widening of Sparks Avenue aligns with two of the board's strategic goals, mode shift from driving alone and expanding the network of paths between Mid-Island and the ferries. The project engineer, Beta Group, has essentially completed their preliminary design scope of work using a portion of the about $1 million appropriated at the 2018 annual town meeting. The project limits are between Williams Lane and 40 Sparks Avenue, and then 12 Sparks Avenue to Milestone Lane. The western section, shown in the image at the top left, abuts public property, which includes the schools, playing fields, and cemetery, and also includes the crosswalk for the Boys and Girls Club. The midsection of the sidewalk widening that is not included in this area has either already been built or will be built by others as part of other private developments. The eastern section, shown in the bottom left, abuts private residences, and the widening will be focused within the public way to avoid easements and acquisition costs. There are two alternatives developed. The roadway profile for alternative one includes widening and realignment of the traveled way. That includes 10-foot travel lanes with 1-foot shoulders and are included with a path that's 9 to 11 feet wide. This alternative avoids utility relocations and conflicts for the western portion. The scope for alternative 2 is greatly reduced with only a 9 to 10 foot wide path. No permanent easements are required. There are also no utility relocations with this alternative at this time. Conflicts with utilities would be still provide a usable path that is greater in width than of 6 feet than what's currently provided with the 4 to 5 foot wide sidewalk. The cost for alternative 2 is also much more than half of what it is for alternative 1, and it is anticipated that alternative 2 could be built with existing funds, avoiding a request for supplemental funding. This is the section for alternative 1 by the Boys and Girls Club, showing the realignment of the roadway a few feet north to avoid a utility pole. Alternative 2 would only widen the existing sidewalk to 10 feet and would widen it around the utility pole by the crosswalk. Staff will coordinate more closely with utilities to evaluate if this particular pole and perhaps another pole could be relocated. For another section, this is alternative 1 by the gas station and car wash that's closer to the Stop and Shop. Again, the road would be realigned north a few feet to avoid the utility pole and would require resetting of the curbing along the north side of the roadway. Alternative 2 again would only widen the sidewalk to about 9 feet in this area, and again widen it around an existing utility pole. And if possible, that pole could be relocated, but that's not what's being shown here at this time. And to summarize, Madam Chair, the preliminary engineering and development for the alternatives has been completed. Alternative 1 is deemed by staff as a much more cost-effective, with only 4 anticipated conflicts with utility poles and narrowing of the path, as it is greater than the path is acceptable. The widening of the path is acceptable beyond the existing conditions, as the path will be wider than the existing facility. Staff recommends the select board utilize alternative 2 for the widening of the Sparks Avenue sidewalk. And as the town manager mentioned, the DPW director and I can answer any questions on this particular topic.
Okay, questions from the board? You looking for an action?
Are you looking for us to approve number 2?
I believe that's what's being requested. Mike, you want us to
I
make the
will-
selection, correct?
I will make that motion as long as we don't touch those historic phone poles. Those have to stay in place, Mike, right?
Fair enough.
All right, I don't want Nat Lowell mad at me.
That's hard to do.
So I believe I have a motion to support alternative 2. Is that what you're telling me, Matt?
Yes.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. I'm just going to say that I have biked through that area and I cannot wait for this project to happen. So if there aren't any questions, Tom, you have a question?
Yeah, Madam Chair, I would just quickly comment, when I saw the packet, when Erica put it up the other day, I was driving down the road around dusk the other night, and there was a lady who was dressed in green and it was getting dark and was blending in with the trees, and she had a cane, and she was kind of between where the end of the road was and where the kind of the grass is on the side street side, and the cars could not see her at all, and it was really worrisome on there. And I think that anybody who has any kind of mobility issues, not e-bikes flying through there or being able to whisk down there, but it really made me, then when I saw the packet, I was like, interesting timing. So yeah, I agree with your comments.
Okay. Ready for vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And that's unanimous. Okay. One down.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this item is to request piloting of a one-way traffic flow northbound along a section of Pleasant Street between Williams Street and Five Corners. As presented earlier this year, the Pleasant Street and Williams Lane complete street improvements align with 2 of the board's strategic goals: mode shift from driving alone and expanding the network of paths between Mid-Island and the ferries. The project engineer Beta Group has essentially completed their preliminary design scope of work using a portion of the $452,000 appropriated at the 2018 annual town meeting. The overall project limits for this project is Pleasant Street between Five Corners and the Sparks Roundabout, and Williams Lane between Pleasant Street and Sparks Avenue. The focus of this evening's item is only the Pleasant Street section between Five Corners and Williams Street, as shown in the image at the top left. And this section was the preliminary concern. There were historic and context sensitivity concerns of the owners of 57 and 61 Pleasant Street, and described in a letter from Sam Phelan submitted earlier this year. As there were concerns with historic integrity, this section of the project was reviewed and comments were submitted by the Nantucket Historical Commission. This section was discussed by the Historical Commission in April and May, with a comment letter developed and approved in July. Comments recommended the use of natural materials and avoiding the use of any type of plastic material. Minimizing signage and preserving the tree canopy and the existing narrow road width were priorities. The comments were provided for 3 options. The option 1 did retain the tree line and two-way traffic flow with a narrow sidewalk between the tree line and the property. Option 2 would convert the traffic flow from convert the traffic flow to one-way northbound with the southbound lane repurposed to a two-way side path. This option received the majority support from the Historical Commission, although they did have an alternative 3, which was to retain the two-way traffic flow, remove and reestablish the tree line between the property and a new narrow sidewalk. This was seen as less favorable by the Historical Commission. Option 1 does have a significant property impact of 3,580 square feet of easement that would be needed for the path behind the tree line. This plan does show the sidewalk and the preserved tree line. The property line for 61 Pleasant Street, or the Phelan property, is essentially the edge of the paved roadway. This image conceptually shows the repurposing of the southbound travel lane for bicycle and pedestrian circulation in line with the Select Board strategic goal. This option does not impact the Phelan property and provides the highest accommodation for active transportation, which is those who walk or bike along the corridor. And finally, this shows the narrow sidewalk and the new tree line with a reduced property impact of about 1,135 square feet. The Historical Commission options were reviewed by the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee, or BPAC, and as well as the Nantucket Planning and Economic Development Commission, the NPDC. Both did review the Historical Commission's comment letter and that did recommend option 2 following a testing of the one-way traffic flow. Both BPAC and NPDC support piloting the option 2 for a sufficient time to establish feasibility of that traffic flow pattern. In summary, staff is recommending the piloting of option 2 between Five Corners and Williams Street. A slide hasn't been developed showing the schedule of the piloting, as it is dependent on completion of sewer upgrade work planned for this winter and would close this section of Pleasant Street for the winter months. The sewer work is anticipated to be completed in the March timeframe. At this time, DPW would open up the northbound lane and established a side path with temporary cones or other devices for at least what we're recommending to be a 1-month trial period. During that period, planning would schedule intersection counts with camera equipment to collect and compare turning movements and area intersections and verify if the side path is being used as anticipated. Staff would then present findings and a recommendation for the long-term scope of the project along the corridor. And Madam Chair, like I said, staff is recommending the piloting of option 2 between Williams Street and Five Corners. The DPW director and I can't answer any questions, although the DPW director could probably address the sewer construction schedule much better than I can.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Matt?
Art Gasparo has his hand up, and I don't know if that was from the previous. Oh, it's for this one? Okay.
I'm going to take select board comments and then I'll go to
Yeah,
public.
that's fine. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't
Yep,
the
thanks.
last.
Thanks for calling it out. Malcolm, did you have something you wanted to say?
If you would mind going back to the slide of option 2,
The visual?
the visual, yeah. Thank
That's
you.
it. Yep.
I have a question for Mike. Have you done any traffic modeling on the other intersections, Mike, of it, peak summer with one way on that one street, what the downstream impacts would be?
Yes, a thorough evaluation was done, as you know, years ago as part of the Mid-Island Area Plan, which recommended this kind of setup for the traffic flow. The recent evaluation of the alternative looked at more current turning movements at counts, but it really made a very basic assumption. And the end result was that the Four Corners intersection would be the intersection that would be burdened the most. It's already a failing intersection. It would be burdened even more with the approaches from Prospect Street and Atlantic Avenue. Those conversations, I didn't bring that conversation into this meeting just for time reasons, and I think they could be more succinctly summarized by just saying that the Four Corners intersection would be the one that would be most burdened. But yeah, some effort has been was done in recent years, but a more thorough evaluation was done years ago as part of the Mid-Island Area Plan.
Don?
To follow up on that was my exact concern. I feel like this proposal, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, was always intended to be paired with other improvements. To overburden the other intersection, which is, in my opinion, probably one of the top 3 worst intersections on the island. By doing this, without improving that, I'm really concerned about it. I don't mind maybe a very brief pilot, but I think that this is going to really cause a lot of trouble in the height of the season, and I would prefer seeing option 1. I know it's more work and easements and takings and so forth, but I think it would be the better long-term result, unless we're going to do other improvements elsewhere at the same time.
Before I take Art, why don't we take Art's comment?
All right. Yeah, take Art.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
So I would just like to briefly follow up on the letter I sent to the board last February raising concerns with this proposal. I've attended the NPDC and the BPAC meetings on this, and there's been, discussion, and I think, there are concerns that have been discussed in those forums as well. My sense was that they were settled on, well, maybe a pilot is the way to go and see how it goes. But I would urge the board not to even do the pilot. And following up on the letter briefly, while it would be nice to have a dedicated lane, I think you have to really consider where all the vehicles that would otherwise be in that lane of traffic are going to go. And the study that Mr. Burns just referenced, which I reviewed, showed the additional pressure on several other intersections where those vehicles are going to end up. I think you also have to consider, what about the vehicles for the homes that are on the streets adjoining this section of Pleasant Street? They now have to loop around to then get to where they're going. So again, you're moving more traffic around, and I think when you've already got a very limited network, and I think it's going to increase the pressure in the rest of the pipes. I think that one of the number one complaints that we hear with respect to quality of life in Nantucket is related to traffic. And so, making a proposal, while, it's great to improve bicycle and pedestrian safety, but it's also got to be balanced with, you're going to worsen the traffic at the other locations. And the pilot, why even go down that road? You know, the buck kind of stops with this board. You're not going to really be able to test it unless you do it in the, you know, the warm season and while everybody is actually biking. And so you're going to have cones and try to educate the public to make this change to then test it out. You know, it's going to create confusion. You're not going to get a realistic assessment if you don't do it during the peak period. You know, instead, there's an awful lot of encroachments along this corridor that are identified in the survey. I've brought that up to the attention of Mr. Burns in the past. And BPAC actually made a motion to have the DPW, I think, investigate some of those. You can even see the picture that's on the screen right now. That car, look at that hedge. How many feet into the road is that, right? It's not going to make a complete bike lane, but it's going to be a lot safer if we just got, you know, the encroachments through the corridor out of the right of way, open that up a little bit more breathing room, and then still be able to maintain two-way traffic. So I would urge the board, please not to support the pilot program and to get the entire corridor cleaned up of all the encroachments. Thanks for the consideration.
Thanks, Art.
Yeah, I have a friend who lives on Pleasant Street further down. He doesn't want this to be one way, but it's interesting. At the same time, he complains about when he goes for a bike ride, he comes down the street and he's taking his life in his hands twice a day, trying to get, you know, through to the bike paths and back. And so I think it's sort of, we're dealing with both things. I like number 2 the best, but I'm not sure it will, you know, in an ideal world, if everything flowed everywhere else, but I'm not sure it's going to. So that's, you know, so I'm kind of where Don is. I'm a little torn on it. You know, I'd love to see a really safe, nice way to get in and out of the Mid-Island for a lot of people, which I think this would begin to do that. But anyway.
Yeah, I like this too, but I was starting to think here. So I'm driving, and I would usually go down that road, coming into 5 Corners. Where would I go? I mean, I could go to the right, but that just loops around. I mean, I'm having trouble figuring out where I would go.
Four Corners, which is just as bad.
Yeah, I mean.
And that's, of those 4 corners, that is the one that Atlantic is the one that doesn't get as backed up right now. That gets 3 or 4 cars. It'll be all the way backed up like the other 3 if we do this, is my sort of guess of it. Because that, you know, my guys the trucks drive through with bread all day long. It's fairly quick to that right-hand turn, you know, off the hospital, off of Vesper. But the other 2 don't move at all. So it's.
I have the same concerns. And I'm not, I mean, I think to get a realistic assessment, we have to pilot this in the summer season. We cannot pilot it in March when people are not on bikes and not out on foot, because otherwise we're not going to get an assessment. There are people that walk along there, and it's very unsafe when they do, and that's the thing we need to address. But the idea of piloting this in the season, it almost seems like we know what the outcome's going to be, so it seems almost silly to do it in my mind, because I think we can predict.
Erica.
Erica, go ahead.
I just wanted to know, I know Drew has his hand up too, but logistically, as I think Mike said, we've got another major sewer project in that area starting in January. And even if the road is complete by March, it still needs to be repaved. Atlantic Ave is still in need of repaving. So this whole area has been under construction for 2 years right now. And I just question when it would even be a viable time to institute this if it goes forward.
Okay, thanks, Erica. Don, and then Sam Phelan's online too.
No, I just wanted to go back to, I agree with Art too. Doing the pilot is going to create so much more confusion and problems in the middle of the summer season if we think we know what the outcome's going to be anyway. And this has needed a sidewalk of some sort for so long. I would much rather put our energy into moving one of the other options, which I like option one, because it doesn't take down those beautiful trees, forward. Like, let's get going on getting it's a lot of work because I've done it before, to do all the easements and the taking plans and all that kind of thing, actually going to each homeowner. I'd rather go with that.
It almost feels like the pilot's delaying the inevitable.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm gonna ask Drew to speak, and then we'll take Sam Phelan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to touch on the timing of the pilot. We largely just felt like, since the road is going to be shut down in its entirety for about a month, maybe 5 or 6 weeks, it was an opportunity for us to piggyback on that. People will, after a month or so, get used to the road being shut down, and then we would just open the one lane. As far as doing it in the off season or versus like in peak season, a 10-foot dedicated bike and pedestrian lane, I think we know works. That works for bikers. The intent is to do this and then get feedback from residents on Back Street, on New Street, and say, hey, how is it working for you getting to Stop and Shop now, right? You're either going the long way around, or you're going up, the other end to Orange Street. And so I guess my point is, if we do it in February or we do it in July, the feedback is really not intended for the pedestrians or the cyclists. It's for residents in the area and people that travel this corridor. So I just wanted to add that as far as the seasonality.
Okay. Mr. Phelan?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. I just wanted to, one, agree with the primary intent of this project, which is to increase the safety for pedestrians on Pleasant Street. I also do a lot of biking on Pleasant Street. I don't feel the need for this for biking as much as I do for whenever I walk downtown with my wife. It's a dangerous area. So I think that's all important. I am in support of doing the trial. I believe what will happen if you do the trial is people will rethink the ways that they will get out to the Stop and Shop, the ways that they will get to Syosconset. And instead of using Pleasant Street, they might use other means, whether it's Orange or Washington Street. So I don't think it's possible for us to sit here and predict what the results of the trial would be. I fully agree that it needs to also be done in the summertime, but right now you've got an opportunity to at least get some initial data when the sewer work is being done. And yes, it is during the off season. We'll see how the local residents respond to the change. And that would then give you the opportunity of making a decision whether or not you conduct a trial in July.
Thank you. Okay.
Can I see number 3 again? Sort of where the bike path goes off the road and back on?
Option one.
That was option 1? Well, let me see option 1 again. Yeah, there you go. Okay.
This is the better one.
Now, is that
Plan.
taking those trees out for sure? No, goes around them.
Goes
okay.
around the
Mike,
trees.
can you show the other plan that shows the sidewalk? Yeah. See it there?
And
It
that-
comes
and-
down here and the trees are in this green area.
Oh, so that stays. And is that, yep, is that all on Mr. Phelan's property, the pull-off? Can I ask Mr. Phelan how he feels about that? Has anyone discussed that with you? Would you be acceptable to that if that was needed?
It's difficult to speak for the entire family here. That property that you're looking at right now is controlled by 7 members of the next generation of the family. As you move down, you then have a property that is controlled by my brother. Then you have a property that is controlled by the the next generation. And then I control the property right in front of 65. So it's difficult for me to say what's going on. I do know that there's a concern on the part of my brother Joe of having a walkway that encroaches on his front yard significantly. And just the whole concept of privacy, there's a concern there. But I do not speak for him.
Okay, thank you. Just trying to get a flavor for it.
Yeah.
Okay, thoughts from the board? I personally am sort of convinced with the let's try it in pairing it with reopening the road after the construction and see what we learn from that. And that'll give us a little more information and feedback from drivers in the area, even if it's not fully effective or complete data. At least the community may, scream loud, this is crazy, don't go there. And then we rethink, and that's not too far off to push things away.
Yeah, I agree with you with the argument with the road being closed down and then reopening like this for a period.
Yeah.
But we have to recognize that it will be very off-season.
Right. So pleasure of the board on that?
I'll make a motion to that effect then.
Okay. Second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And timing to be worked out with Drew and sewer and everything else.
Subsequent to the sewer
Yes.
project finishing up the phase? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, great. 2 down. Thanks, Mike and Drew and Mr. Phelan. That was really helpful, your input. I really appreciate it. Okay. Next up is town-sponsored warrant articles.
Okay, so this is the first go-round, the first preliminary outline of potential warrant articles for the 2025 annual town meeting. It is not final. It is just your first look at this. So the first section is all of the annual articles. There are roughly 22 of them. The unpaid bills, the reserve fund appropriation, fiscal 20, that should say 25, budget transfers. I guess I didn't change these numbers all the way. Fiscal 26 operating fund budget, all of those types of things. Oh, I know what happened. I'm remembering now. When I did this, I printed it and then I forgot to save everything. So I had to redo the entire thing. And I missed some stuff.
So in essence, all the 24s are 25s and the 25s are 26?
Yeah, to ignore all the numbers. But those are the actual articles. And then we would have some potential, okay, I'm waiting for planning to give me a list of potential zoning bylaw articles. And there is one from the Affordable Housing Trust, which involves the rezoning of 8 White Street. I had that in a list of potential articles. General bylaws. So we got a few things here that are mostly in exploration. We've had some discussions about the regulation of e-bikes and e-scooters. We had a meeting with town council recently. I believe BPAC is reviewing this, and Mike was in on the meeting as well. I don't know if he's still on. And hopefully they are looking at regulations versus a bylaw. There may be some possibilities there. The noise bylaw.
Libby, on bikes,
sure.
before we
Yep.
get off that, one thing that I did talk to some BPAC people, one thing that we always say, we don't know, what a level 3 is or a level 2 is. I guess the state has put a law in that level 3s have to have a red license plate on them. And so if they have a red license plate, if that's true, and they have a red license plate, then it should be easier than, just guessing. So.
That sounds much easier than it is.
Oh, I
because
realize
where
that.
does the license plate come from? And does the town does actually have a bylaw that says all bicycles are to be registered and have some kind of sticker or license plate, which of course we haven't done that program in decades.
I remember the green and white plates.
Yes, the green and white plates, right. In any event,
Maybe could I ask one question
yeah.
about, could you go back to the noise? What's the concept of the noise bylaw?
Well, I didn't actually get to the noise yet, but
I'm sorry.
I was about to launch into it. But back to the bikes for just a second. Hopefully there is some, I guess there's some maybe activity at the state level to make this a little bit easier. There are the different classes of bikes. I think for the most part, the class 3s are fairly easy to identify. 1 and 2 aren't so distinctively identifiable. And there's some sort of sticker requirement, but you can't see it from an enforcement point of view. So it's hopefully we'll come up with something. The noise bylaw. So this is routinely brought up by different groups. And the main concern has been noise in the summer, early in the morning, and on weekends. So we have something of some thinking from sponsored, I don't know if I would say sponsored, but kind of being spearheaded a little bit by the Sconset Civic Association. And we had a bit of a discussion today about it, and it needs some internal review. I've only just started looking at it myself, but it looks like it seeks to sort of normalize across the island rather than in the old historic district or non-historic district, the same restrictions. And they don't seem overly burdensome. I think Sundays, you'd have to start your noise an hour later or something like that. In any event, as we know, noise bylaw changes have caused a stir at town meeting and have not always been fully supported by various groups. So the thinking, and Sconset Civic Association, if anybody's listening, I haven't gotten to you yet to tell you because it only came this afternoon, but we were discussing perhaps they could go to the Builders Association and discuss this with them, and if there could be support from maybe a group like that, this might have an easier time at town meeting. So, and I'll forward you the proposal that they sent so far. Rental car bylaw changes. This is in progress. I have a number of emails about this from licensing and town council that I have not yet put my head to, but if you recall last year, the town sponsored an article, it was tabled, and I think we need to get back to this. I don't know if the board wants to, I know you probably are not, you're sick of hearing the word STR, but I don't know if you want to think about anything to be sponsored by the board. We've had some internal discussion about an exemption from traffic calming signage. We have a bylaw that prohibits traffic calming signage. So we have one right now, which is the entrance to Sconset, which is technically on a state road. It's the radar sign that says how fast you're going in. So that we've had some requests from other neighborhoods to put these signs in other areas of the island, but we really can't because of our own bylaw. So there's been some discussion about could we have an exemption for this type of thing through some certain way to determine where they would go.
Can I just say?
Yeah.
I think it's actually really helpful to have something that moves around to different areas where speeding is chronic, but not permanent. So, for instance, I live near Somerset on the way to Maya Comet, and I can tell you in the summer, I can tell who's racing for a tee time. And I've seen people drive in excess of 50 miles an hour. And it can be crazy. So to me, the idea that we have a mobile unit that can be deployed when a neighborhood is experiencing a rough period, just as a reminder, I think I would be in favor of allowing that exception, not on a permanent, but on a temporary basis.
So we do have the radar trailer now that can be moved around to different places, and the police department is getting ready to launch a data collection in certain areas so that we can determine if people are complaining they're speeding on Somerset Lane. They would put out this data collecting device that wouldn't really be totally visible to people. unless you're really looking for it. And then if the data is showing there is active speeding on a road like that, then we'd put some resources out there to deal with it. So the radar trailer can move around. The idea was people wanted the sign like is going into Wisconsin in more areas than that.
And I can say in traffic safety, people want those.
Yeah.
And the radar trailer can't always fit on all the different roads. You would never be able to put that on Prospect Street.
So maybe there'd have to be a smaller version or something if we were going to try to do that, yeah.
Worthy of discussion, apparently.
Yeah.
Okay.
So think about that. The Natural Resources Director and I have discussed the potential for a local bylaw to mirror Chapter 91 enforcement. This is kind of a conceptual discussion right now. We can't really do too much enforcing of Chapter 91 violations, but also the state doesn't enforce it either because they're not here. So if we had a local bylaw, maybe we could do a better job at that. Because of the new Concom wetlands regulations, there needs to be some sort of cleanup of the wetlands bylaw. So that's most likely going to be coming to you. Home rule petitions, this section's sort of incomplete right now. And we did have a bit of a discussion earlier during the agenda meeting as to what I mentioned before that our representatives have said, which is we submit too many home rule petitions and they get diluted and they don't get processed in a timely manner. And some of them we can't do without state approval, like Article 97 issues with real estate and projects and takings for bike paths and things like that. But some we might want to really think through. So I have not, this is just the list from last year. I haven't gone through and seen what was approved at prior town meetings, but also we were going to tap into you, Tom, because I couldn't quite remember about the legislative session. We had been advised for a long time, just submit your home rule petitions annually so that you always have a current town meeting vote. But this year I heard from Senator Sears, legislative person, don't do that. Just get them approved for the legislative session. And then if that legislative session expires and the petitions haven't been approved, then resubmit them. But it's a little confusing.
On that issue, I think when we as a board, when we're discussing, sort of citizen articles that are home rules or if we have, department articles that are home rules and we want to prioritize them and make recommendations against a couple just because we have too many, that's what, we always end up sort of at the last minute trying to put the recommendations in, et cetera. But at some point we shouldn't be scared, I think, of saying, geez, we like this one and this one, we don't like these three. Those are great ideas, but we want to try to get this through. We should be able to, we should think about prioritizing it a little bit if we have to, so.
Okay, Mass General Law acceptances. Right now, I have the good landlord tax exemption opt-in. You'll see a question mark there. The housing director and I have talked about this, and I think we need to do a little research on it, but I think it is an opt-in available to municipalities, so that's potential. Some real estate related items. We've got several easements, conveyances to National Grid for various town projects as shown there. And then the coastal erosion structure approval in connection with the SBPF town project at Baxter Road, that's sort of in question right now. The project has not been approved as of today, as far as I know. I need to go through the 2024 annual town meeting town-sponsored articles. If they didn't pass or didn't get acted on, do we want to resubmit any of them? The town council charter, you all had a discussion as to, it was either a non-binding ballot question or a non-binding question of some sort at town meeting to gain a sense of if people support a town council form of government or not. So that's pending. And then financial and or ballot questions, we'll most likely have maybe a debt exclusion or two or three, I'm not quite sure yet, for capital projects, probably capital exclusions or exclusion. I usually include real estate on here because sometimes there's something that pops up that we want to put forward. We'll have supplemental design for a new DPW facility, which you all know about, Island Home construction. Baxter Road alternative access, that's tentative. I don't think that's going forward at the 2025 annual town meeting, but I put it on here so I wouldn't lose track of it. We've talked about establishing a concession revolving fund. Right now, the revenue from the concessions goes into the general fund. We've talked about putting it into a revolving fund so we can use those funds to maintain the concessions, but it will mean that we'll have to understand that's less revenue coming into the general fund for the budget. The town employee housing revolving fund, sort of a similar concept. The rents from the town employees pay for housing would go into the revolving fund. These would be really for town-owned properties, and then we'd be able to use those funds to maintain those properties. We will need an appropriation article for the community impact revenue adopted at the special town meeting, which was brought up earlier by Ms. Holgate, and I jotted a note to see if maybe that item could be brought up at your meeting next week, to see if town council would be available to talk about the concerns. And depending on how that pans out, we would need an appropriation article if we're going to continue with this, that's dedicated to certain things.
And I'd be curious when we're going to know some data on who, will we be able to find out who is actually being impacted by that? Who's paying it, to Don's point, and does it turn out to achieve what we hoped or create more confusion, and do we stick with it or do we consider backtracking on it if it's really confusing and really not applied? There's a huge loophole to avoid it. Maybe it doesn't have the outcome that was intended by town meeting. So something to think about.
And I don't know if or when we're going to have the specifics on that data. Do you know, Brian?
I do not at the moment, but we'll certainly take a look at that before next week.
Sorry. So since it's being started to be collected in for leases affected in October and November, we would probably get the first payments in December, which is the next quarterly payment for activity in September, October, and November. But I would not be of the opinion that DOR is going to tell me who is paying it, because it's taxpayer data and they won't release who's actually paying the tax, the room occupancy tax right now. So I think all we would get is a dollar value, and we would have no insight into who actually is impacted by it.
Okay, so maybe crafting another way to gather input.
I mean, I would suggest getting a representative from NAREB to come and talk, or a couple of people to give you even a little bit more color on what I've already said from my anecdotal experiences.
We did ask town council when they were here and we discussed it, and it didn't sound like it was going to be two houses on the same lot were going to be treated the way that we think it is. So
that's changed.
Because we did check on that and they said no, and so it'll be interesting.
Okay.
The only other, since I developed this list, a couple of more things have come in, but I didn't get them on here just yet. So when we do this outline again, it'll be updated. But the last item is opioid settlement proceeds allocation article. The town of Nantucket is part of a nationwide opioid usage lawsuit, and all of the cities and towns that participated will be getting some allocation. Ours isn't very much. It's maybe $25,000 for a period of time per year, but it needs to get allocated through town meeting. So it'll be a standalone article. And just a reminder, the citizen deadline, a deadline for citizen warrant articles is Monday, November 18th.
On the opioid money, I mean, can it just be appropriated towards the human services grants?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
I would agree.
Okay, next we have the 2025 Select Board meeting schedule. It's in your packet, and we noticed something late in the day about a holiday that I think has been brought up before, Rosh Hashanah in September. And it looks like in 2025, that does fall on a Wednesday evening, so we would probably cancel that meeting. I think it's September 24th.
September 24th, 2025 is the end of Rosh Hashanah. Yeah, it ends at nightfall, so the meeting would conflict.
That one always trips me up. We make round hollow with raisins, and it's a different date every year. So it always throws me for a loop.
Do you need a motion?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I'd be happy to make a motion to cancel the meeting of the 24th of September.
I'll
So
second.
endorse the schedule with the cancellation of 2020, of Rosh Hashanah,
Yes.
24th of September. Okay. Second from Matt. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Okay, Rob, finally. We're going to talk about the tax rate shift for.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Taxes sure clear the room. So as I've done in the previous years, we do a preliminary discussion on the upcoming tax rate hearing, the residential exemption, and a potential tax rate shift. And I'm at the end of this, and in the coming weeks, I'm open to ideas for options as we go forward. So thank you, Erica. Next slide, please. The purpose, just to refresh everybody's memory, the purpose of the tax rate hearing is to determine the tax allocation by classification, adoption of a residential exemption or not, that's up to you all, and the adoption of a shift in how this is all allocated, and that again is up to you all as well. Next slide, please. The tax levy is the amount to be raised by real estate and personal property taxes. Last year, fiscal year 2024, that amount was just over $116 million. The levy amount is distributed by property class, which is based on each class's proportionate and fair, full and fair cash value for each class. Assessors across the state will classify all real property according to its use as of each January 1 into 4 classes: residential, open space, commercial, or industrial. And municipalities, decide annually within limits established by statute and the Department of Revenue the percentage of the tax levy that will be paid by each class of real property owners and personal property owners. And the decision is going to be made at a public hearing, which will be the tax rate hearing in probably about a month or two. This is what the FY24 values look like by class. You can see the residential class had almost $35 billion in value. And you can see the rest. I won't go through all of them because we've been here a while tonight, but you can see what the totals are. And then as you move across the slide to the right, you can see what the percentages of the totals are. So those values equate to the percentages of the total. So residential was just under, well, it was 93%. And you can see all those percentages there. And then as we go down the slide, you can see what happened after there was a shift. We did a 1.7 shift. And the percentages change when we do that. So the residential, in this case, was reduced a little bit. The commercial was increased, and those were the resulting tax rates there. And then at the very bottom, you can see what the resulting total residential value ended up being. The residential parcel count, which includes not just improved properties, but vacant ones as well. And then the average residential value on the far right was just under 3.2 million. That's out of everything, all residential properties. And then you all adopted a 25% residential exemption, which is 25% of the average residential value, which ended up being last year $799,150. And that, just to refresh everyone's memory, when we have an assessed value, that number comes off of what the assessed value is, and then what's left is what you get taxed on. Next slide, please, Erica. Thank you. This just shows, you can see the blue line there at the top is the residential, which is by far, the most valuable portion of what we're talking about here. Everything else is almost not even on the graph. Next slide, please. So the residential exemption is something that was enacted by the Commonwealth in 1979 and adopted locally here in Nantucket in 1981. The residential exemption is an option under property tax classification, Mass General Law, Chapter 59, Section 5C, that shifts the tax burden within the residential class from owners of moderately valued residential properties to the owners of vacation homes and higher valued properties, which are not, so the higher ones and the vacation homes tend to not be owned and occupied, or they're owned, but they're not occupied primarily by their owner as their primary residence, which is the key qualification for the residential exemption. And if you scroll down a little bit, thank you, Erica. So when the residential exemption is applied, the amount that the residential class pays is still the same, but it's shifted within that class. And the result is that the burden is sort of lifted off of the lower valued, or the ones that are primarily occupied by the year-round residents. Next slide, please. So this sort of explains a little bit about the residential exemption. Currently, the residential exemption cannot exceed 35% of the average value in the residential property class. As I pointed out, last year, the average residential value was just under 3.2 million. This year, I'm not sure what it's going to be yet, but it's a little bit higher than that. If you slide down a little bit. So that's what the exemption amount was last year. Yeah, continue, please. Thank you. So the loss in value that is attributed to the exemption is made up by the entire class as a whole. So it's not a freebie. It's not a free lunch. The amount that was exempted last year was just under $1.8 billion in value, which was then redistributed within the class. Only the residential class is affected by changes to the residential exemption itself. And Nantucket is one of approximately 20 communities in the state, including Boston, which does offer the residential exemption. So we get this question a lot. It is not simply a Nantucket year-round exemption. It is a state exemption. Next slide, please. So this sort of shows who benefits. And if you just scroll down just a little bit more, the property on the left, property number 1 and property number 2 are the lower values in this example. And you can see at the bottom that property number 1 is only paying, what does that say? 46%? Sorry, it's been a long day. 46% of what the non-exempt properties are paying, and then as you go forward up into the higher valued ones, they're paying. The burden is really shifted to them, and they're paying the majority of the. They're carrying the weight of this. If you want to slide down a little bit, please. Yeah. So after we adopted the shift last year. The first percentage was the 93.5973, and then after the shift there, the residential class was only paying 89%, and you can see the commercial, industrial, and personal property classes were paying a little bit more because of the 1.7 shift. Yep, keep going, please. This is a fancy pie chart that shows that. And keep going, please. Thank you. So these were options that I presented last year, and the one highlighted in green is what you all selected. And those are the tax rates that we ended up with. You can see that the differences are not that much from one option to the next. but they do make a difference to, your average taxpayer. It doesn't seem like a lot, but it can be.
I have a question on that slide. When I was looking at that, I was wondering if it's right, because you would think that if more was shifted to commercial or the other way, that there'd be bigger changes. You'd go from, 23, 22, 21, or, on the top residential change, and that the commercial change would change based on how much you shifted. And
Well,
it doesn't seem like it's the commercial's the same on all three
It's
sections.
misleading. So it's
Yeah.
each line across it's that much more. It's not, so that 426 on the far right is
Yep.
just from the line above it, and then as you go, so when you get to the bottom, the total is really 426 times 3.
Oh, all right, so it's 3 times 426.
Correct,
All right.
yeah.
And 3, so it'd be 1, 2, 3 times the 23 or
Correct.
22.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
now I get it. Now
Yeah.
math makes sense to me.
No, that's a good question, so I can update that for the next presentation. Next year, when I do this again, I'll correct that.
You got to keep the free lunch comment in there. That's for my mom.
Next slide, please, Erica. Thank you. Oh, and that's it. So questions, comments? No? Okay. So the plan is that I will get values certified by the Department of Revenue and come back in probably a month and a half or so and present options. If you all have suggestions for options you want to see, let me know what those are, and I can work on that. Okay.
Tom?
Thank you, Rob. That was very good. Do you remember last year when you came to us and you talked a little bit about residential exemption, how you qualify, and et cetera?
Yep.
I think it might be a good idea if you reiterate that when you
Okay.
come back to us.
Sure.
Because I think that's all questions that we all get, and I thought it was valuable information.
Yeah, I mean, I can just, real briefly, I'll just say that the primary qualifications are you have to own the property or be an owner of it, which an LLC ownership does not qualify because an LLC is not an individual as far as the state's concerned. Even if there's only one person in the LLC, it's a separate entity from the individual, so that doesn't qualify. If your property is owned in trust, you have to be both a trustee and a beneficiary, which qualifies you as an owner. And then you have to live there as your primary residence, which is sometimes difficult for us for people to prove to us that it's their primary residence. But the state says that's only really 1 day more than half the year, is how the state defines that. So those are the big qualifications. Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Rob.
Yeah, my intuition is to keep it similar to where we are now and not, because we have such expenses coming, not, and keep the ability to give the shift when we need it coming up, as opposed to doing too much of it now.
The exemption.
Exemption, sorry. Keep the exemption where it is now.
Yeah. And just as a comment, I asked Rob to also help us understand the seasonal communities designation under the Affordable Homes Act does give us, as an automatic seasonal community, the option to go up to 50%. But Rob was explaining to me how that works with affordable housing units, and then there is a floor and a minimum, how far they can go down. But we talked about having him talk a little bit about that when he comes back.
And then he's got to adjust all of those manually, so you add a bunch more of those in and, yeah, okay.
Yeah, so, great. Anything else? Okay. Any committee reports?
Just one comment that I thought about, and this is I'm not on BPAC, but I think I've talked a couple times about the bike path signage and solidifying that, and they've had a presentation that they've made a couple times that I think we should talk about with Libby, about putting on an agenda. Might take 10 minutes, 15 minutes, but I think it would be good. A lot of people watch this. It would be good for people to understand, kind of see pictures and understand what we're talking about and why it would make things safer, not less safe, And I think I talked to Ian, and he's willing to, Ian Golding or someone else from there. He had his knee just fixed, but he'll be up and about in a month or so, a couple weeks. So maybe we could get him or someone else to come and give it. So that's all.
Maybe on the same night we talk about e-bike
There you go.
regulations. Okay. Anybody else? Or a
Move
motion?
to adjourn.
Okay.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, everybody at home.